Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage, the Vault Series. Today's clip was shot back in 2004 in New York City. This was the first time I met my great friend Will Lee. For me, it's a little awkward looking at this interview because this was the minute that we met, we started doing this interview. If we were to do an interview today, it would sound differently. It'd be two old friends talking instead of two strangers talking, but I'm sure the information would be much the same. Will is the world's biggest Beatles fan, has one of the greatest bands, the Fab Faux, who cover the Beatles. And they could do songs that the Beatles never could perform live due to today's technology. I hope you like this clip. If you do, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Once again, my dear friend, great musician, Will Lee. What was the first instrument you picked up, or when did you first decide you wanted to be a musician yourself?
Well, you know, parents like to push their kids gently in directions, and my parents tried pushing me in the piano direction, maybe the violin direction, maybe the trumpet direction, which I kind of stuck with for a while, but it wasn't until the Beatles came out onto the Ed Sullivan Theater in February of 1964 that I decided, aha, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
So you weren't playing guitar until
No,
that?
I had a set of drums since I was 6 years old. By this time I was about 11. And I didn't know what to do with them until they showed you a close-up of Ringo, sweeping back and forth in the hi-hat. That's how he gets the sound, you know. You know, they influenced chord changes, they influenced melody, they influenced sound. You know, they influenced, you know, taking chances and not just doing the same old stock, you know. Before the Beatles, it was like, doom, doo doo doom. Do 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 yup up up boom. You know, that was like kind of that whole like, okay, there must be more to it than this, you know. And there was, and they were pulling it out of singles that they got off boats that came in from the States,
right,
and finding all the good stuff and realizing and really having a real solid opinion about what they liked or not. You know, there's that recent thing about John Lennon's jukebox that was just on.
What's that?
They pulled all the records out of John Lennon's personal jukebox, which had, you know, all these great songs like, you know, 1, 2, 3 by Len Barry was in there, and the Isley Brothers version of Twist and Shout, the original, and just all kinds of really great records, you know, where they got the lick for I Feel Fine. And Otis Redding singing My Girl, his version of My Girl, which is pretty rare.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff in there. They did a TV special on it, and an album came out of all the records that were in the jukebox. You know, it's like a double CD or something. It's really interesting. But yeah, their take on our stuff was what really, you know, became a special whole genre, was, you know, the way they interpreted our artists. And when it came back to us, it sounded like something brand new, but still familiar. So we could embrace it. It wasn't so foreign. Like, what is this kind of weird music?
Did you not play on George Harrison or play with George Harrison?
We did. I was able to take a gig from George one time. My phone rang, and I was monitoring the answering machine at home, and I heard this voice come on, and I heard this voice say, "Hello, Will, this is George Harrison calling from England, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in playing with me for a night at Royal Albert Hall, if I could steal you away from that television program that you do. Please call me at so-and-so number." And I wasn't listening very well because I knew it was my brother, because he likes to imitate the Beatles, and he does a great Liverpool accent. So I didn't call him back for a couple of days. I thought it was my brother messing around. And so George called again, "Will, you know," and I heard, so I said, "All right, Rob, stop messing around." He goes, "This is George, you know." What? It really was him, you know. And I was like shocked. And he was really calling me to come play with him at the Royal Albert Hall.
Had you not known him before this?
No. Well, actually, I did meet him he appeared when we were doing that Gary Moore album. He showed up one night to jam. He and John McEnroe showed up. They wanted to just jam. They heard we were in town, so they wanted to play. And, you know, we said, "Sure, we'll play with you, man." And he was great. We went over to his house. He was totally gracious. You know,
the castle.
Totally down to earth. Yeah, Friar Park, which was really close to the studio with the big stone walls. That place. And, you know, I thought this was a great experience. You know, I've had my Beatle moment. You know, that was amazing. And next thing I knew, he was calling to, he was putting a band together to do this thing at the Royal Albert Hall. And it ended up being the last concert he ever did. And sadly, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It was also the first time he had played London since the roof of the Apple, you know, studios,
Mm-hmm.
the Apple offices, you know, since they played the rooftop sessions. So needless to say, it was pandemonium, you know, in town that night. And it was also really insane because Ringo sat in with us for the last 2 encore tunes. So for me, the Beatle freak that I am, this is a moment that, you know, had me yelling into the audience, the front bunch of rows, "I'm in rock and roll heaven, you don't understand!" Like I was so uncool that I cartwheeled onto the stage. And I've been embarrassed about it for all these years until this last year I ran into Danny Harrison, his son, George's son, at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Awards where they did a nice tribute to George. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
And Danny said, he came up to me and he gave me a big hug and I said, "You remember me?" And he says, "Oh yeah, man, you played with my dad the last time he played. I remember that I was with all my friends and you did a cartwheel onto the stage. We thought that was so cool." So he kind of redeemed me when he said that. You know?
Is that on film by chance, that concert?
Well, I think as a bootleg maybe. I don't think it was ever really filmed for any kind
you don't
of
have a
production.
copy of it?
I got some scratchy something somewhere, you know.
God,
It's
I'd have
pretty
it.
bad.
I'd have to have one if I were, that were
It's
me.
pretty bad. I haven't really looked at it. I just looked at a piece of it. And the sound, being a musician, the sound is so unbearable that it's hard for me to watch. Because I know what it sounded like on the stage, and it was massive, you know. And here it's like just echoey and, you know.
Did George give you anything?
He paid me.
Did
He
give
flew
you
me
any-
over on the Concorde.
Yeah, that's cool. He didn't give me.
He signed a picture. He said, "Thanks for saving the day," and he crossed it out, night. At George's house, you know, he was, like I said, he was really hospitable, and he was hospitable to the point where, like, you know, he kept, "Would you like some more orange juice? Can I get you any?" You know, it couldn't have been nicer. And at one point when he walked out of the room, I said to Olivia, "Doesn't he realize that he's like, here's the mountain and here's George. And he's at the top of the food chain. He doesn't have to be so nice. Why is he so nice?" And she said, "Well, he comes from working class, you know, and that's just the way he is, you know, just a real guy, regular guy." And he had mandolins all over the place. Ukuleles,
yeah.
excuse me. And he collected some beautiful ones, and they're mostly made out of exotic koa and Hawaiian woods and stuff. And you have to pick one up and just play. I said, "Is it okay if I play?" He said, "Oh yeah, please, you know." So I start playing something in the key of G or whatever, and he picks up another mandolin, and next thing I know, we're playing together. And I don't know mandolin from flandolin, you know. And it was just a really great experience. He was so open. He loved playing, you know, and he could play the hell out of a mandolin too, man. Like he could play it like, you know, like that was the only thing he played, like a virtuoso, you know.
So tell me about the Fab Faux.
Well, the Fab Faux is, well, what can I say about the Fab Faux, man? First of all, the Beatles are the single greatest influence on pop music ever, you know, obviously. They invented everything on the fly in the studio with the help of George Martin and Jeff Emmerich. They came up with flanging. They came up with like double tracking, automatic double tracking. Yeah, feedback. Forget about it. How about taking a guitar direct into the board for Revolution? There's only one way to get that sound, you know. So the Fab Faux for me is almost like a little bit of a full circle type of thing that I found the urge to do when I started to realize that if I were to pick up a guitar, the first thing that I would automatically know how to do is sing a Beatles song. So I can't say that about any other band, you know. But but the Beatles, no, nothing but the Beatles. The Beatles are something that there's on another level from everything else, and they know it. You know, Paul knows it, Ringo knows it, Neil Aspinall knows it. They all know it.
Have you met Paul?
Oh, sure.
So did you know John? Or did you ever meet John?
I actually only played with John overdubbing on a Ringo album one time, but I never met him in person. So Fab Faux is an attempt to try to replicate the finest bunch of pop songs and finest bunch of compositions. I'll even go so far as to say compositions in the last 100 years that have come out of this planet, you know, out of anybody writing on this planet. And not only not because of any one particular song, but because of the body of work that was done in such a short amount of time. When you think about it,
they kept making evolutions. You know, I mean,
they kept growing every day, and they kept taking chances, and the chances that they took didn't result in oops, that was a flub. It was success after success. You know, they kept making right decisions one after the other, and what we're left with is a legacy of, you know, if you want to put them all together, you could probably have a nice 10-hour concert of the best music you could imagine. It would be overwhelming. So we do 2 or 3 hours at a time. We've probably learned about 165 Beatles songs to date. And what we have as an advantage over the unfortunate Beatles was that, you know, not that they wanted to perform live, but they couldn't have done this stuff live. But now, through technology, we're able to, you know, I can make samples at home that sound a little bit like what I think the records sound like.
I'm the Walrus.
Yes, all that stuff. And we can add strings or horns to it, to whatever's appropriate, or a harp for She's Leaving Home or whatever, and do it live and really move some people to tears, you know. Because the music, we really mean it, you know, and the music is like, there's none better.